In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16, it says, "Therefore we do not lose heart, but though the outer man is decaying, yet our inner man is being renewed day by day." And so we talked about how this perspective of seeing things from an eternal perspective, things that are seen are temporary, the things that are eternal, the things that are not seen are eternal. And how our service to the Lord, and we're encouraged to continue to be faithful and not lose heart because we have that eternal perspective. And how even though our physical bodies may decay, that the inner man is being renewed. And so it says, therefore we do not lose heart. Then we looked at chapter 4, verse 1, and it talks about mercy. That as we have received mercy, we do not lose heart. And it goes on there at the beginning of chapter 4 to talk about our ministry and our service. It talks about people being unresponsive. And it talks about people being veiled and their eyes being blinded. And we went back and we looked at Isaiah chapter 6, where God tells Isaiah to go, and he tells Isaiah to keep preaching, but nobody's going to pay any attention. And then we looked at Romans chapter 11 that talks about how God has shut up all in disobedience. And so we have a tendency to become discouraged and lose heart when our service is not producing results as we may think are appropriate or right. And the world's way of doing things is that, well, if you are doing something that's not producing the results you want, then you got to change what you're doing. To a large extent, churches kind of have adopted that philosophy that the goal of the church is to grow and to reach people for the Lord, and more people. And in order to accomplish that, they've enlisted all sorts of techniques. And of course, it is God's desire that people be saved and people grow. But it's God's desire that we be faithful to the truth. The focus there in chapter 4, verse 1, and the end of chapter 3, is that our service is because of the mercy we've received, not because of the results we produce, because of how we're saved. 1 Corinthians chapter 1 says, not many mighty, not many noble, not many wise. God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, and so forth. And so he says, we do not lose heart because we've received mercy. And that doesn't change. When we think about our salvation and how we're saved, that we're saved by God's grace, we're saved by mercy. So mercy is the withholding of the punishment due. Grace is the granting of favor that's not due. So one has a negative aspect. You're guilty. You deserve to be punished. You're not going to be punished. Grace goes beyond the withholding of the punishment to grant favor. And so I like to use a courtroom situation. So Brad is on his motorcycle and he's zipping down the highway and he loses track of how fast he's going. And in exhilaration, he gets a ticket for going 95 and a 55. And so he goes to court and the judge shows him mercy and he says, "You're guilty, but I just had a V8. And so I'm going to withhold the punishment. The $750 fine, you're not going to have to pay it." That's mercy. And then he says, here's the keys to my brand new Mercedes. That's grace. So the mercy is the withholding of the punishment due, and grace is the bestowing of favor. And so when we think about our service to the Lord and our ministry, and just a general idea of the work that God's called us to do, to make disciples, to share the gospel with people, to help them grow and encourage them, that it's easy to become discouraged when we don't see anything happening. It's easy to say, well, I don't see anything happening, so I'm just going to quit. At times when I face discouraging things, I used to tell Mary, I'm just going to grow tomatoes. Well, you know how well tomatoes grow here. Not very well, but there's more hope for that sometimes than people changing, right? But our service, our ministry, is not based upon what it produces. It's not based upon the gratitude that people show. It's not based upon the recognition. It's not based upon the appreciation. It's based upon the mercy we've received. As we have received mercy. We have this ministry. As we have received mercy, we do not lose heart. And so if you think about that, maybe sometimes we see significant results or tangible results or apparent results. And other times it's like you just as well beat your head against the wall. But that's not the driving force. The driving force is our salvation. And so if we're looking at the mercy we've received and the grace we've received, that doesn't change. And therefore we don't lose heart. We don't become discouraged.